Thanks for tuning into this presentation. You're about to either watch a video or listen to audio recorded at the Grassroots Radio Conference in 2012 at the Independent Media Center in Urbana-Champaign. Please enjoy.
Jeff's going to talk about how and what and all that, but I wanted to talk a little bit about why we're doing this, because that's also kind of useful, and it's a little bit of context. My name is Doug Arellanes. I am an American citizen, but for the last 20 years I've lived in Prague in the Czech Republic. So what happened was, actually, I went to school at UC Santa Barbara, and I'm an alumnus of KCSB. So I've been, it was my first introduction to community radio. I had a show for 5 years on KCSB. And in 1991, some of my friends from college went out to Prague. Basically, they were just backpacking through Europe. And they got to Prague and they ran out of money. And they were like, well, why don't we just stay here because it's super cheap. They just had a revolution. They love Americans. And why don't we just, stay here? And so what they did was they started a newspaper, an English language newspaper there in the former Czechoslovakia. And I came out in February of 92 to work on that paper, but also to start working on a local community station. Hi. Yeah, making waves. Yeah, come on in. So I went out there in February of 92, and I started working. Right after the revolution, it was a really strange time because everything was completely upside down. And there was a pirate station that had been set up during the revolution called Radio Stalin. And it was actually broadcasting from an old bunker in a hillside overlooking the city of Prague. And what happened was that immediately after the revolution, there was this president who was brought in, this dissident playwright by the name of Václav Havel. And Havel, long may he wave. Havel was he was really trying to completely take out a lot of the old guard. And so what they did immediately was they legitimized the station and they gave it the first commercial license in the country. Radio 1. And so I've been working with Radio 1 since 92, and I've had a regular show there for almost 9 years. But I was doing an English language show there. Anyway, this is a long and boring story, but it's sort of a little bit of background in terms of what my personal involvement is. In 2010, along with two of my partners, we started a media support organization, a nonprofit foundation called Source Fabric. And what we did was we recognized that a lot of media organizations, whether they're newspapers, radio stations, magazines, whatever, they had a real need for technical support. And so we started Source Fabric as a way of trying to address the technical support needs of organizations. And so I got some slides I can explain a little bit about what we're doing. Source Fabric is now it's 2.5 years old, and we have a staff of 50 right now, with offices in 6 cities officially and another 2 unofficially. So headquarters in Prague, offices in Toronto where we're developing Airtime, a development center in Cluj, Romania, in Berlin, in Guatemala City, in Minsk, Belarus, the last dictatorship in Europe, and then satellite offices in Warsaw and Belgrade. And one of the reasons why I'm here is actually because we haven't really done a lot with US media organizations. And with the help of Prometheus, we actually have been looking at what's been going on in the LPFM space in the US, because I think that there's actually significant opportunities both for local community stations in the US, but also to join a community of interest based around community radio worldwide. And so a lot of the long-term bet that Source Fabric is making is to say, you might have a little low power FM station somewhere, and you think that your problems are completely isolated, but actually there are hundreds of stations worldwide that are in exactly the same situation as you are, both in terms of the content, but also in terms of the technology. And so a lot of what we're going to be talking about today is just like the how-tos and stuff like that, but I just wanted to explain a little bit about why we're doing it. And one of the things that's significant about everything that we're doing with Source Fabric is that everything that we're doing is free and open source. So GPL v3, and we've considered MIT licensing, but for us right now, GPL v3 is the way to go. And so everything that we've got is available on our site, and you can check that out. And so I've got some slides, and let me just try to really go quickly through these. One of the things is explaining or understanding like how radio is totally undergoing this really weird transformation right now. I mean, you've got, not only do you have like this whole low power FM movement in the US, which is great, and I'm so happy to see this movement starting again to really start to pick up the new licenses. And obviously I was really moved to see all of the long-term stations that are here. That's just terrific. And what we're doing a lot as well is actually helping organizations that may not have considered themselves radio in the past. And one of like the examples that I really like to point to is a magazine that's based in London called Monocle. And Monocle is this really high-end magazine. It's like each copy costs like 12 or 13 bucks. And it's a great magazine, but what's interesting is that when they decided what they were going to do with digital, they decided not to do the typical route and make an iPad app and everything like that. They said instead, we're going to start a 24-hour radio station. And so they are really at the vanguard of this idea of creating a radio station out of an existing publication, which, I mean, when you think about it, WGN out of Chicago, right? WGN, the world's greatest newspaper, it's not completely a new concept. That print and radio have been together for quite some time, but we do see an awful lot of redefinition of radio. And is Pandora radio? Is Last FM radio? Is are these streaming stations or music blogs that have a little player app? Is that considered radio? I mean, in my mind, it has to be with a human at the controls, right? I don't like algorithms. I like when there's a human being who says, this connects to this, and this is what I'm going to play you next. And there's some human logic at it. And for me, algorithms, they're great. I love my Google PageRank just like anybody else, but for me, algorithms are not radio. And this is one of the things that we've been really trying to support, which is sort of KCRW out of LA has, I think their slogan is something like hand-picked radio or anybody from KCRW or from Southern California here? Like their slogan is like.
Not considered very grassroots.
Sorry, but I mean, but the point is that it's handmade. There's a human being who's making these selections, and so it's as opposed to something like Pandora, right, where it's like, well, if you like this, then you'll like this, right? So algorithms aren't radio. Trust the DJ. And I think this is a really nice lead into the next concept, which is serendipity is really important in radio, and the ability obviously to sit back and do things like drive a car is also really something that is not going away. And whether we're going to get that content through a stream or through terrestrial FM, or if it's going to be digital audio broadcasting, which is actually starting to really take off in Europe. There are lots of different ways that people are going to receive these signals, but at the end of the day, it's still radio, right? Your delivery may change, but it's radio. So what we've been doing with Airtime is that we started making this thing, and Airtime is kind of, the way that I describe it is like, it's kind of like a mashup between iTunes and Google Calendar. So if you can make a playlist in iTunes, and you can then schedule it on a calendar to say, okay, Tuesday at 3 o'clock, play this playlist, right? That's one of the ways that it works. But another thing that is that you can actually use it for a lot of other stuff, and Josh is going to go into the details about that. But the development of this thing so far has gotten to the point where, I mean, yeah, it's free and open source. So we've got USB sticks, and you can put it on any computer. But what we've decided to take it a step further, which is to put it into the cloud, and everything can be run off of the cloud as well. So, like, this is an interesting thing because it actually opens up a whole new set of use cases where you don't need even to set up a server or whatever. You can just go to this website and sign up for it. So
that doesn't work for on-air stations.
It
You could feed an STL from it.
You could. That's true.
We do essentially the same thing for our STL. We started out using liquid soap.
Yeah.
Before you guys were.
Yeah.
For our STL. The problem is latency.
Sure.
And simply where the servers are located.
Right. And there are a lot of different use cases, and the thing is that defining what your acceptable latency is. I mean, I don't want there to be a single god engineer who tells me what my minimum latency has to be, right? And for me, if I have an LPFM where I can't afford to have, for example, a full-time engineer, or if I have a streaming station where I can't afford for a sysadmin or any of that kind of stuff, then the cloud is an option. And this is one of the things that we've been looking at because, yeah, it's free and open source, and yeah, there might be some people, involved in that sort of approach, but still you have to hire a sysadmin. And sysadmins are pricey, right? And so this is something where the cost, trying to keep the cost as low as possible is important. Now, if you've got a volunteer sysadmin, awesome, good on you.
I have a question for you, Douglas. Have you guys thought about rolling a live distro that...
I'm glad you asked that question. I've got some here.
Oh, cool. I don't need one.
Yeah.
I already tracked the development for it.
Okay, great. But yeah, I mean, we're working with an organization called 64 Studio.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and they help us roll a live distro.
Okay.
And so yeah, we're doing some fun things in that area as well. But yeah, so just to give you an idea of some of the organizations we're working with, this is West Africa Democracy Radio out of Dakar, Senegal. This is a regional radio station on FM in Dakar, but also throughout the countries of West Africa. So what they're doing is they're broadcasting via satellite, and then they work with local community FM stations all through the sub-region where they're picking up the WADR programs and broadcasting them in addition to the programming that they have locally. Another one, this is Resonance FM out of London. I mean, London's in everybody's sort of mind space today, but Resonance FM out of the City of London is a 24-hour station devoted to radio as art. So they're kind of like, if you're familiar with Radio Lab or this type of thing, imagine that as a 24-hour station, right, doing nothing but art stuff. So like an example of one of the shows you might listen to on Resonance would be that there's a woman who has a cell phone and a saxophone, and she walks around the city playing her saxophone and improvising depending on where she is and what she's seeing. Or another example would be that they had a book, they were reading from this book about mountain climbing, and so they took the this book, and what they did was they had a guy in the studio reading from this book, but they mounted a microphone and a 3G mobile phone on a helmet, and they gave this to a mountain climber, and he was climbing a mountain live in Spain while the memoirs of this mountain climber were on the air. It's tremendous stuff. Resonance FM has a really nice site as well, and they're a partner with us, and they've been one of the early adopters of Airtime. And along with us, together we won an award in March. The Guardian newspaper out of London, or out of the UK, awarded us with the Mega Award for Best Technology for Social Change. And actually with West African Democracy Radio, we last year won the Knight Batten Award for Innovations in Journalism. There were 2 other organizations that were awarded. One was Storify, the other was Andy Carvin of NPR, and then there was us with West Africa Democracy Radio. So Nation Talk in Canada is serving First Nations, and they actually have multiple Airtime instances, and they're serving multiple programming out to lots of different people throughout Canada. This is Bieszczady FM in the hills of Poland, in the mountains on the border between Poland and the Czech Republic. And so they're using Airtime. And one of the newer ones, and one of the more interesting ones that we've been working with, is in Sana'a, Yemen, an organization called the Yemen Times, which is the only English language news organization in Yemen. And we just recently installed an Airtime instance for them, and they're in the test phases of actually producing their own sort of streaming station using it. So those would give you some ideas of the kinds of places that we're working. And like I say, we're not doing a lot yet in the US actively in terms of like project implementation, but there are, and it's really cool actually to hear like that you're following our development branch. That's awesome. I mean,
yeah, I've been on the forums with, mostly conversing with Martin, but
great.
Yeah, I came to the project probably about 6 months ago in searches for something better than Rivendell. Rivendell is great to us old radio geeks, right?
Yeah.
But for a volunteer organization, just the terminology leap.
Yeah.
What's a cart?
We gave up.
Who here knows what a cart is? Huh?
Yeah.
Okay, now how many of you were in college radio, right?
Actually, our experience is that most of the people actually kind of like it. It's the, but there's the discrepancy between the on the air and the between essentially a live assist mode versus programming your overnight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Airtime is not a live playout.
Yeah.
It's no different than Rivendell in that aspect.
Yeah.
But we've got mix. Oh my God, we got mix.
Yeah.
Where was
So
it?
you like mix?
I love Mix. I was using Mix, and I actually wrote an email to the Airtime team saying, "Yeah, look what these guys are doing."
Yeah.
Over a year ago. And so Mix and Airtime will share a music database now.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely beautiful.
Yeah.
But about 6 months, or no, about 4 months ago, right before 2.1 came out, I got involved on the forums, and I said, my very first post was, this is what community radio needs to make this a legitimate option for us because of our reporting requirements on the DMCA and all the other hoops that we have to jump through.
That's really
And let
cool.
me say, I think within 15 minutes I had an email back from Martin saying, awesome! We're already doing this in 2.1, well, that's on the schedule for 2.2, and well, let's work on the other one. So, but
Okay.
that is the beauty of an open source project. Not that it's free, but that we need something changed in it to work for community radio. We can get on the forums, we can get in touch with these guys, and they're willing to help make it happen.
Thank you. This is oh man, it's music to my ears right here. But thank you.
I work
Yeah.
in a web station. We're doing the streaming. We use SAM broadcasting software and Music One scheduler.
Right.
But I'm thinking there gotta be a better combination so that I would be able to go live on air and have the scheduling done without the annoyance of the cloud scripts and all. It's not really that advanced. You know,
Yeah.
in terms of what kind of files it would take and how you would be able to set up your timesheets.
Yeah.
It's really annoying, and I was hoping you.
Yeah. Actually, this leads me to a really important couple of things. One of the things is that how many broadcast engineers are in the room right now? 1, 2. Okay, good. Because I was talking with Al about this last night, and there is this mentality among organizations that says, well, does it do this? Like you were just mentioning, right? Does it do, scripting and, the live playout, right? And Airtime doesn't do that yet. It doesn't do live playout. It only right now at this moment does sort of predefined, pre-scheduled.
Is live playout like someone on the mic? If it's live playout.
Well, I mean, like somebody sitting in the control room and saying, "Okay, I'm going to play this file now," right? Live assist in that way, like basically like somebody sitting with a copy of iTunes or Winamp or whatever, and just like saying this file now and this file now and this file, as opposed to actually just putting the things into a playlist, which is what we do right at the moment, and playing them out.
Gotcha.
So what I'm bringing this up, the reason I bring it up is that, do we have with Airtime the feature set that Rivendell has? No. Do we have the feature set that Sam Broadcaster has? No, we don't. And I'll be the first to admit.
I would argue you don't want them either.
Well,
You don't want criteria for like playlists and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's a whole big discussion about what to do with smart playlists, which is actually going to be in the next release. There'll be some kind of a smart playlist function. But what I wanted to say was that for us, it may not do these things right now, but we've got a community process underway where we're actually building the features that people want, as opposed to saying, I'm just going to buy this box. I'm just going to buy this piece of software and put it in. And so this is a really important part of what we're doing, because it is a grassroots effort to say, like, to gather up the requirements from stations to say, okay, we want it to do this. And we'll, because it's open source, and if you have like some developer, people on your team, you can actually take it and expand it in that direction. So that's something really important to keep in mind, that it is not a perfect piece of software, and it's still being developed in a lot of ways. And so there are going to be a lot of questions about, like, does it do this, does it do that? And maybe, right? But that process is what's really important. So to talk about who's using it, or some of the different ways that people are using it, bedroom DJs, right? I'm DJ Bing Bang, and I want you to hear my new mixtape, right? Whatever, right? That's one thing. Obviously stations, clubs and venues. There is a feature in Airtime so that if you have, let's say you have a jazz club, and you have a set time where you have people playing live. Well, you can actually set the Airtime instance to record that set and then automatically upload it to SoundCloud for sharing through SoundCloud, or for rebroadcast at a later time. So maybe the show starts at 11 and you want to have it rebroadcast the next morning from noon to 2.
How about FTP upload or?
Yeah, it's got that.
But can you broadcast it live?
Yeah,
Yes.
obviously. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that would be what you would do is you'd have either a streaming server or your own sort of live infrastructure for that from a
If you're a
different place.
club, you may not want to do that. It's like saying, don't bother coming down.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. Education, or this type of thing, where if you might have a college or something like that where you have a lot of lectures, you can actually schedule the lectures and put them into a program. We've seen a few different events, film festivals and arts festivals, where you have a temporary station. Sometimes in certain countries, it's fairly easy to get a temporary broadcasting license for an event. That's another use case. I think with Josh, there was an arts festival in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Still going on.
Still going. It's going on right now, right? Where they've got an Airtime instance for this arts festival. But then when the festival's done, they're just going to take it down,
Yep.
right? Another thing we talked about in Monocle 24, but other publications could be doing this type of thing as well. We've been in talks with The Economist. The Economist has, what they do is they have audio versions of most of their articles. If you go to SoundCloud and you search for The Economist, you can actually, you get a lot of different people reading Economist articles. And so we've talked with them about this. Hasn't happened yet, but that would be another example. Let's say you've got a print publication, and you would be able to then make a streaming station out of it, or a broadcast station. So I wanted to talk a little bit about toolset, and it's good that you mentioned Mix. Mix is obviously really, really cool. I mean, Mix is this program for club DJs.
I'll bring it up.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna go into it later.
Okay.
in my half.
Cool. Obviously, SoundCloud. Who doesn't know what SoundCloud is? Don't be shy. Okay, YouTube is for video what SoundCloud is for audio. So what you can do is you can make an MP3 and then upload it to SoundCloud, and then SoundCloud actually takes care of the distribution and the bandwidth associated with delivering those MP3s. And depending on how you set up your SoundCloud instance, you can allow people to download the files, or you can allow people to put them in, as an embed into their blogs or other websites, which is actually cool. It's a great way of expanding your audience. The other thing that is significant about SoundCloud is that they've just broken 8 million users. So already SoundCloud has a massive user base, which again allows you to reach more people than you may just by having downloads on your own website. In the case of West Africa Democracy Radio, they've got more than 30,000 people following them, and they've got now more than 100,000 downloads of their programs. And that's not plays, that is downloads. So, I mean, we think that SoundCloud is significant, but there are others. I mean, Audioboo is great as well. It's like one button, with the Audioboo mobile app. That's, I think, really cool. Same with Mixcloud. A lot of people, a lot of the DJs who were using SoundCloud got, they were like, oh man, they sold out, and they moved over to Mixcloud. They're both cool. I have an iPhone, and I wanted to mention a couple of interesting apps for the iPhone. One of them is F-Stream, which is a streaming player for the iPhone or for iOS. So if you have an iOS device and either a 3G or a Wi-Fi connection, you can listen to any stream using F-Stream instead of something like iTunes on a computer, right? The point about that is that sometimes you may need to have playout remotely. Let's say that you've got a Wi-Fi connection, but you need to hook that up to some speakers at I don't know, an Occupy demonstration, right? That would be a way of getting from the infrastructure in the cloud out to speakers on the ground. Another one that I really like is called WavePad. WavePad is like a more featureful sound recorder for iOS. It even does some simple editing of sound files directly on an iPhone. And there's Mix and Audacity, which we've you're fairly familiar with.
I've got Mix up here.
And great, yeah.
And this is actually my playlist from the NFCB conference in Houston. I did my Saturday night show and streamed it live back to Wisconsin using Liquid Soap.
Yeah, yeah. Another one that I found recently, so recently that I haven't put it up on this slide, is a really neat tool called Papaya Broadcaster. And Papaya Broadcaster is like the holy grail for me of mobile devices, because what it does is it's like the equivalent of Dark Ice or one of these types of streaming clients. So you can take your iPhone and stream directly to an IceCast server for streaming, right? So what you can do with this, and I hope that I had this set up, but when we get into the demo, one of the things you can do with Airtime is you can actually set it to listen for a stream. And so if there's something coming over a stream, then Airtime will switch over to whatever's coming live, right? So you can even do that from an iPhone, right? Now in your case, you were doing it from this program Mix, right? And you were doing your show from Mix, probably with a microphone plugged in either to a...
Actually, because it's an old laptop and it can't handle the latency, I run a separate instance of Liquid Soap to actually generate the stream to go back. But Mix, if I had a faster laptop, to do it all.
Yeah. But I mean, the point is that you can do that from a laptop, right? That's one way of doing it.
That's what our remote broadcast units are. They're laptops, just a couple of these with cellular modems in.
And this is an old laptop. I mean, this is, how old was your laptop?
This was less than $200. It's an old ThinkPad X61. It's probably 3 years old. 4 years old.
So you can play the mount point in the playlist.
Yeah. Well, you can't schedule a mount point yet. That's coming next. But what you can do is just set it to listen And if there's anything that comes over the live or the live mount point, then it will just switch over to the live stuff.
Which is
while
one
the
of the
playlist is playing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So here's a great case model for you. Could you put Airtime up?
Yeah.
quick?
Sure. Okay.
Sorry, don't mean to be hijacked.
No, it's
but
fine. This is what it's about.
This is one of the beautiful things when Airtime decided to use liquid soap for their back end to do all the actual audio handling. It allowed them to have automatic fallbacks. So if you're playing out something and it automatically goes bye-bye, it just goes to the next thing in its priority list. And so what you can do is you can have, let's say there's a...
Here, sorry.
Like bye-bye is in the files, not in the server or something? Or
Yeah.
both.
No problem.
both what?
Because you can actually have a web stream be one of your inputs. Okay? So let's say I've got a podcaster doing a show down in New Mexico that we have a listener base for, and everybody really likes it.
Is that Windows
Well,
7?
I can run his...
Josh.
I should just plug it into mine quick.
Yeah, plug it
Yeah,
into
why
yours
don't I
here.
just do that?
Here. Go.
I'm running Debian. It'll take seconds.
Yeah.
Or should.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yep. Where is it?
So, okay, how many of you have licenses and are already broadcasting? Just out of curiosity, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, how many of you are in the process of getting your license? All right, that's good. And are you streaming already? Or are you doing anything with streaming? One project that we did in Palestine and in Jordan is that before they were able to get their broadcast license, they were actually doing streaming as sort of a warm-up or a practice for the live broadcast. And this is definitely something to be considering because it's a way for you to get your team together. It's a way for you to get your staffs used to producing their programming, but it doesn't have to necessarily be dependent on getting your FM license. So this is like the warm-up to it.
WDRT we were driftlessradio.org for 3 years prior to applying for our license. We went on the air with 42 on-air live people right away because they had spent time on the air on the internet stream.
That's exactly what we're doing right now at Reverse Radio. And we're even asking our producers not to swear and stuff, just like,
Yeah,
We're actually
Get
thinking
used to
about
it.
bringing back the Driftless Radio website and stream as our training ground for new people. So we'll actually operate 2 radio stations on the internet, 1 on air, but that second one that's on the internet only will be our training ground. So
Yeah.
we were talking about the sources. Liquid soap takes care of all of it in the background. The guys at Airtime decided to make 3 available, but there's no reason why it can be tailored to have 6 available.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the neat thing. You can have different sources, and you can set them so that when a source appears, it automatically overrides one of the others, and if it disappears, you fall back to the one below it. So what you can do, I was giving the case of, let's say we've got a podcaster in New Mexico. He always podcasts his show at 4 o'clock on Wednesday, and we really like it. Well, guess what? He got into a car accident. This Wednesday it doesn't come on. My playlist keeps playing instead of bumping over to him. Let's say there's a problem with the internet backbone.
Was there a playlist scheduled at 4? What are you playing at 4? It's just an
Oh
hour.
no, this is just, I was going up here to show how you have 3 different sources. And so I can turn on the different ones. So if and it says there's no source connected right now. But if I have that defined as a podcast, once that source goes live, that will automatically switch over and it'll start playback on it. So the other really neat thing about this is it's not just the possibility for podcasts, or say you've got a DJ that can do a really great show, but he's got physical handicaps, can't get into the studio. You could set him up with this in a little studio in a closet at his house, right? But here's the other really neat thing. Our remote broadcast units are essentially nothing more than a laptop that are capable of producing a IceCast mount, right?
Wait. IceCast mount is a stream, like an MP3 stream, right? But it's connected to this server called IceCast.
But basically, we don't even need IceCast running. We're just using the IceCast protocol to transfer everything because we can stream right to Airtime. So I can have someone covering a news event on one side of town, someone else on the other side of town, and it can be, okay, it's going to be breaking news. I can go into Airtime, go ahead and point them to the 2 remote units, and when that remote unit becomes available, it overrides the playlist, automatically puts that person on the air. That person, if they're connected through our VPN to the local network, they can actually turn themselves on and off the air when they want to go on and off.
Yeah.
And so what happens with the playlist? Is it paused or is it still
It's just
going
playing-
through?
it's
It's playing in the
Yeah.
background the way that they've got it done right now.
Okay.
But that's definitely a feature that
Yeah, a little background about why this is happening. The original, we've been working on this software since 2002, and there is the roots of this project come from Belgrade in Serbia during the Yugoslav War. There was a station in Belgrade, Serbia called B92, and B92 was one of the few voices against the Yugoslav War and against the regime of Slobodan Milosevic. And with B92 in 1996, the police came in and stormed the station and tried to shut it down. But what they did was, using a very rudimentary stream, they were able to stream out of the country, out of Belgrade. They streamed to Access for All, which is an internet service provider in the Netherlands. And then they took the stream and the BBC broadcast it back into Serbia. So B92 was able to stay on the air that way. Then what they did was, another time they got shut down, they did a different setup. They were using Winamp with a program called Timbuk2, which is like a remote desktop kind of a thing. And the whole point of that was that they had this transmitter set up over the border in Bosnia. And so the FM transmitter was untouchable by Milosevic, but they were able to broadcast via FM back into Serbia. So when we were making the software, one of the first things that these guys from B92 told us was, look, whatever you do, this station has to be remotely controlled, right? We have to be able to log into it from wherever we are and remotely control it, right? So what we did was we said, okay, let's control it through a web browser then, right? So anybody who has a login can log in using the web browser to control the calendar and what's going to be broadcast when. But also you can upload files, you can make your own playlists and all this kind of stuff in advance. So that's kind of cool. Now the thing is, we were thinking like, oh my God, what are we going to do if the cops come and shut down your station, right? But really, in the case of most radio stations, the biggest emergency that you're going to have is that your DJ doing the midnight to 6 shift is not going to show up. And so instead of having to come down to the station to set something up, right, this way what you can do is you can just log in from home and set something up as a backup, right? And so, it's just like, the point of that is that this is something that allows you flexibility in a lot of different ways, right? And you were talking about these live mount points, and I've got one running right now, and let me see if this is going to work. See if I can get some of the sound on this other computer. It looks like I should be streaming. If not, I'm going to keep working on this during the demo, but I need to set up
I have an open mount point, our old IceCast mount point, if we could try using it.
Okay, I'll get it in just a sec. But
you want to see something neat?
Oh, you want to see something neat? Nah, I don't want to see anything neat.
Okay, this is running on a virtual machine on a
Yeah.
server, just a Linux kernel KVM server, back in Viroqua, Wisconsin right now. This is my sandbox, and we're going to see that file is stored locally in Wisconsin, but because it's all accessed through a web browser, I'm just running Chromium. I'm playing a file that's stored on that server right now.
So I can
through
access
Airtime's
that
interface.
through a link. through that 10.30.1 link, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm connected via VPN to our LAN.
So I
back
can
at-
like be in France and like put that on my computer and listen to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, but you could be in France and make your show.
I could be in France if this was. We're not using this live yet because it doesn't meet some of our core requirements.
Yeah.
But if we were, and there was a problem right now, I could go in and fix it from here.
Because you have your server in.
Here's the really neat thing.
Yeah.
You put your server for a live station, you put your Airtime server at the transmitter. The
Yeah.
reason why is because if the STL goes down, you got a playlist running, buddy.
Yeah.
If the STL's there, even if you want a separate instance of Airtime back at the studio and just stick one there at the transmitter as a backup if your transmitter doesn't have those capabilities, you can do it with a $50 old computer you can get from the local college, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't take anything to run it.
That's a tiny question. Do you have metadata? Does it
Yeah.
provide metadata?
Yeah.
Yeah,
how
and
about-
that's one of
how
our
about custom
core-
metadata.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah.
not yet.
Well, there's sort of.
One of our core requirements that I submitted for was for DMCA, for sound exchange reporting, we need to report the label.
Right.
Airtime will track that. My problem is I have an existing library of almost 42,000 tracks. I am not going to have someone go through and put in the label for each one of those.
Yeah.
Now, Vorbis tagging, which is used on Flax and OGS, for those of you that know about open source stuff, you can define any tag you want. Label can be one of those. Right now, Airtime won't read it in, but that's hopefully on the to-do list for 2.2.
And now that I hear it, yeah, first time I've heard of that one, but I haven't been really following the day-to-day on the boards.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is another example. Like somebody says we have something that we really require, so let's put it in the development pipeline. Or again, if you've got a developer or a programmer on your team, you could either do it yourself or you could hire somebody local to do it for you, and we can show you how to do that. But the point is that this is like a Swiss Army knife for radio broadcasting in certain ways. This is actually probably a good time to hand over some of the demo stuff. I mean, you're doing a great job of demoing.
No,
which is awesome.
go on, I'm sorry.
But Josh McLean is working with Source Fabric out of our Toronto office, and Josh is going to show a few of the things and just sort of walk you through. At the same time, many of you who have computers can actually follow on your own instances. We've been doing some setup in that way, and if you guys have computers, now we have a limited number of USB sticks with Airtime preloaded, and if you want one, and if you ask nicely, we'll be happy to give you one. So if you don't need one,
Does it work for Mac?
no, it is only on Linux.
It is for
I got one.
Yeah.
So right now I'm running Rivendell. So,
Yeah.
So I can take Rivendell off and
Well,
or do I need to talk to my IT guy?
talk to your IT guy, because there are a lot of reasons why you still want to be using Rivendell, right?
Right.
For a little bit longer.
Yeah,
Hopefully it's
yeah.
not.
Al actually has been talking about that. I mean, we were talking about this a while last
We were
night.
talking about it last night.
Oh, so yeah, you use Rivendell?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to talk to you right after this. for
Yeah.
Sure.
So I mean, the thing is that there's a lot of reasons why you want to keep Rivendell around for the foreseeable future, right? Especially when it comes to live playout,
Right.
and or like live assist and this type of stuff. Rivendell still does a lot of really cool things that Airtime just isn't going to have for the next, say, 6 months or so. Although we're working on a lot of that stuff now, for the next 6 months, don't throw away your Rivendell
Right.
anytime soon.
Right. Well, I mean, I was gonna keep that computer, but I'm thinking about going over to. Cause I'm not really a techie guy.
Yeah.
So I thought about going to Sam Broadcaster. So if something goes wrong, no, I need something. But I love this right here, man.
Actually, one thing I'd really like to see, I'll request it right now, a Debian package.
Which Debian package?
you know, .deb file so that it can be? So
They
that
already
it-
are.
There is?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a repository.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'll have
Oh,
to find
okay.
it.
And Martin's working on nightly builds for development change.
Yeah.
Okay.
So.
Yeah.
If you're from before, now it's
I offered to
gotten way
do it, and
better.
he said,
that-
Yes,
they
I just
have
gotta
a-
get back to it.
Okay,
web
okay,
file
good, I'll
set up.
try it now.
Yeah.
Try it again. So
Yeah.
go to their site and pull
Yeah,
down
yeah,
their
okay.
special.
You know, we've tried for the last almost 2 years now to get included into both Ubuntu and Debian, into the Universe repositories. And I'm sort of like, for non-geeks right now, this is like that kind of thing when you hook up a fax machine and the fax machine goes, right? So bear with me for a second. What happened? We've been trying to get Airtime included into Debian and Ubuntu, and the problem has always been, there's always been some little stupid thing, and the Debian people especially, we're trying to get into Debian, and there's always some stupid little thing that comes at the very last minute, and somebody says, "Well, we're not going to include this. You know, you're not completely compliant," and so we haven't been included yet in either Debian or Ubuntu. We're still working at it, but what we've done in the meantime is we've set up our own repository.
Yeah.
You know, so that whenever we do have a release, all you have to do is just add these 2 lines to your apt files, and you're off to the races.
That's what you have to do.
Yeah. And I mean, but we still do want to get into both Debian and Ubuntu. How many of you don't know what I'm talking about right now? Okay. All right, sorry about that. Free and open source software has a lot of different flavors, and there's a lot of different ways that people have taken all this free software and combined it up into usable installations. And one of the best ones in my own mind is this one called Debian. And Debian is really neat because, like, when you install a Windows program, you hit setup.exe and it goes through the Windows wizard and says, okay, I promise Bill Gates my house, my car, my farm, I submit, I agree, right? And that's it. And what happens is that anytime there's a new version of the software, then you have to actually reinstall. You have to usually uninstall the old one and reinstall a new version, right? But what's cool about the way that Debian works, and with this other derivative of Debian called Ubuntu, is that once you install a piece of software, then it keeps track of that software forever. So as long as there's a new version, there's a little notification that says, hey, there's a new version of Airtime available, and go here and update it. And usually within a couple of clicks, you can totally update the whole thing and get it up and running fairly easily. And so that's really one of the neat things about free software. It's always free, and so therefore it's always going to be updated as long as there's people to update it. And that's just kind of neat. So let me hand it over to Josh, and he can actually walk through some of the features.
Yeah. I work in Toronto. I'm the only non-technical person up there. The rest of the guys I work with, we have an amazing development team that works on Airtime. One of the things that Doug didn't mention that I wanted to shout out really quick is the last two major updates of Airtime have really been driven by community feedback. The last 2 features we did is this bad boy up here where you can hook up different sources. That was totally driven by community feedback. The other one's actually one that's upcoming, and that's going to be smart playlists. I'll talk a little bit about that later. All the computers in this lab should be logged into an Airtime instance at some point. Those are on our servers running in Germany right now. So I'm going to run you through some of the quick and dirty about how to create a radio show. So right now what you're looking at is when you first log into Airtime, you go to the Now Playing, and you can see what show's on air right now. Right now we're listening to some Airtime artists. It's just the default music that I had. I've got about 50 seconds left on the track and 20 minutes left on my show. Now you notice down here, this green one right here, that's what's on now, and then the rest of it's what's up next. The one in orange is about to get cut off. So my show's going to end before this song gets through, and none of this other stuff's going to get played. So that's how Airtime displays that. Well, you might want to edit your show before it hits that, so you have a good transition to your next show. And one of the big changes that we made was you can now edit these playlists live. so that I'm changing the playlist that's on the air. Before, once the playlist started, the only thing you could do was cancel the playlist in the middle of it. It was really messy. We didn't like that. We switched it up to this. So the next tab over is Add Media. We're not really going to be doing anything with this, but it's a really easy drag and drop interface. So you can just drag your songs over here or shows. Just click Upload and go to town. It's going to add them all to your library, and then you're going to be able to go to Playlist Builder.
Pardon me, when you say you can add a show.
Well, if you, I mean, if you have like an hour pre-recorded show that you did already and it's one single file, you just kick that over there.
Edited in Audacity or Cool Edit or whatever you're using.
But just one MP3 file.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you can really do as many as you want. I don't have anything on my laptop handy to show you, but it's pretty straightforward.
Where the audio formats
MP3 and OGG right now. In a month, we're going to be supporting FLAC. So I'm told.
Can you schedule a playlist based, let's say if you don't have like a file that's, let's say I want to rebroadcast today's show from at 4 p.m. tomorrow at 8 a.m. and like I know what the name of the file is, like it's like, you know, Joe's show 07/27/2012.
What you do is you kick it, you put it into a playlist where you just leave the track, and you'd have you can set up shows to replay multiple times.
Once you put something in here, it goes into a library. I mean,
but what if I don't want to have to choose it every single night to play the next day?
You can actually set it to rebroadcast, I think, up to 7 times.
Yeah.
So a single show, there's a record and rebroadcast feature. So if, let's say you've got a talk show, right?
Yeah.
And you've got your microphone and your mic mixer, and you plug the output of the mic mixer into your computer, right, into the record jack on your computer. And what it's basically doing is kind of like a VCR. It's set to record from this time to this time, and then it stores that into this library, and then you can reuse it however many times you set it. And we just chose 7 because we figured, you know, that's probably going to be the maximum number of times that a show, you know, should be rebroadcast. I mean, you know, it was just an arbitrary decision, but you can actually set it then so each of those different instances can then, you know, you can say, okay, my original show is Tuesday from noon to 2, but the rebroadcast will be Wednesday noon to 2, Thursday noon to 2, and so on. Sweet. Right.
Yep. So this is our playlist editor. If you guys are yeah. Did you have a question? Somebody else?
I got one quick question. Do you have video tutorials?
So we have a couple that I've done. I plan on making more.
That's very important.
Yeah.
You get instant feedback right now.
Yeah. Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, and then the back.
This is all in the cloud right now.
Yeah.
So if you were to add media, like say, I don't know, say you're doing a really short show, so you only had like 5 songs or something. So you added like 5 songs, and you set them up in a playlist, and then you scheduled that playlist to play in an hour or something. That's all in the cloud. So for the cloud, like how much space do you have in there?
It depends. So in this instance, the thing that I'm using to show you guys is we do a hosted solution called Airtime Pro, and it's different pricing based on different amounts of storage. I'm going to give you guys a code at the end of this that you're going to use for 3 free months of, I think it's our 30 gig package. If you want to use that until you get like your own server running, because like we said, it's open source, so if you want to set it up yourself on your own servers, go for it. We provide help on the forums, stuff like that. But if you do Pro, we host it, we take care of the backups, our sysadmin manages it, and then you get this lovely thing right here, Chat Now. That's normally me. Right now that's not me, but normally you click that and something pops up and I'm like, hey, what can I help you with? And then we figure out what you need. But so it's just it's a little different. Yeah.
And then you guys also have like on the flash drives and stuff, it's Airtime, but it's like a desktop application.
It's not that you've actually turned the machine that you plug that into an Airtime server. Yeah. Is what's happening right then.
You boot from the
you can boot from the USB. Yeah. And I wouldn't recommend that.
You need to show us how to install it on our. Are you going to show us how to install it?
I'm not. There's some really detailed install instructions on the website.
Yeah.
If you need any help with that, I would suggest going to our forums because different install problems. If you have problems, they're different based on your situation. So showing you here might not necessarily be helpful, but we have really good install instructions, and our forums. Like he said, Martin watches like a hawk. Martin's our lead developer, and the rest of the devs check them all the time. So we really try to help, because really the idea is we want to make this so you can do your thing. Like, I want you to get your message out there. That's my job. So that's what we want to do. So we want to help you get it installed. Yeah.
I have just a really quick question.
Sure.
So I have the USB I'm trying to run, but I'm having trouble with my wireless card. So we're just wondering if anybody else is having trouble, because we developed a live distro a few years ago that we're running also just live distros for streaming, and we have Internet TV console and dark eyes.
Yeah.
And we have several troubles with wireless cards and audio cards.
A
so
lot
I'm just
of
wondering.
The wireless cards, because everybody was in bed with Microsoft, have some pretty proprietary lockdown firmware. And it has to do with Linux distros wanting to be pure and clean, and so you would have to tweak that live distro just a bit to probably make it work with your wireless
So it's
cards,
probably, but you guys have that trouble sometimes.
That doesn't
with a regular
me.
install.
This
This
is the first event we've used our live distro at.
Okay,
like
cool.
I just made those at my house like the
Cool.
day before I left.
Cool.
So I'm glad to hear that. Well, I'm not glad the wireless thing's not working, but I'm happy to get some feedback on it.
The reason that we're doing the live distro is just basically this is a way for people to try out. You know, what you do is you basically just stick the USB into your computer, and you turn on your computer, and it is essentially running all of Linux, Ubuntu Linux, and it's running a working version of Airtime. And so this is just like a way to get familiar with it. What you would do normally is that you would actually just go through the proper installation procedures on your own hardware at your facility. That's one way of doing it. Or the other one is, you know, if you're, if you decide that it does meet your latency and your own requirements, then you can also use our cloud service for running your own instance, or for running, like you're saying, multiple channels of the same station, right? So like, we have started to see this with some of the bigger NPR affiliates, that they do run several different streams at the same time, and this is also something that you could do as well, especially for stations with a large archive, right? You can run your own, here is my current affairs, or public affairs archive, here's my music archive, here's,
and this really opens up to stations, if you ever do get the cash, to have an, HD sub-channels on FM.
Yeah.
So you could run more than one audio channel basically on the same box.
Well, you would need to still install several boxes or set up several Airtime Pro accounts.
Okay.
Right?
Well, or virtual machines.
Virtual machines, yeah. It depends on how you want to do it.
Well, I'm going to take off my REC hat and put my J1 hat on here, because I have a streaming radio station right now, and actually everything I have, believe it or not, but I'm archaic. I'm still running a Winamp playlist, but I have all this stuff in the background that generates the PLS files. It's all DMCA compliant. Everything is hunky-dory. And, so something like this sounds good to me, but I also need APIs. I need to be able to talk to it from other applications. I have something that interrupts the broadcast when there's earthquakes in Japan. I mean, there's a lot of good stuff, and I've built a lot of interdependencies with Live 365 and a lot of interfaces. And one of the things I've always wanted to do is expand off into a second channel.
Yeah.
And all I needed to do is just interface with my Shoutcast server. I don't even need a sound card.
Right.
So I still would need two separate boxes if I wanted to run two instances. And have
this is where you would need to do some testing to see if your machine is fast enough.
I see. So it's a speed issue.
I mean, it's the Liquid Soap, which is this playout engine that we're using, does require some CPU.
I see.
So that's something that would take a little experimentation. But like I'm saying, one option would be this cloud-hosted version, where we take care of it for you, and you're just streaming from that. But I mean, in terms of APIs, right now it is relatively limited in terms of the number of APIs that we have. But this is also something we're working on adding a lot more, depending on what people's requirements are. Right?
If you're a capable hacker, Liquid Soap that's actually running in the background under all this has extensive API and terminal capabilities, and you can actually manipulate it the whole time that Airtime is running on top.
Basically,
as well.
I just need to be able to control the playlist from another application. You know, normally through like RESTful commands and stuff like that. And that's how I do it right now with J1. And so I mean, this I'm right now I'm looking at I was looking at another source. There was some other freeware under Windows. God, what is it called? Radio DJ or some silliness like that.
IDJC?
No,
DJ console?
it was something out of Russia. It was radiodj.ru or something like that, and it had some functionality, but not everything I needed. And so I'm looking, and especially since I got the developers right here, it's like, well, you know, I will send you my. I mean, is the API fairly well documented?
Yeah, there's everything that we've got is real well documented. We've got a manual, which is hosted on Floss Manuals, which is more for end users.
Right.
The thing is, like I'm saying right now, the API is essentially for the now playing widgets. So in terms of like true RESTful APIs, it's only for the now playing widgets that we have as RESTful. But like he's saying, Liquid Soap has its own set of APIs for playback. And so what a lot of people are doing is they're setting up their own Liquid Soap scripts for different things. Like, you know, if there is silence, then do this. And that do this might be play this backup playlist, or it might be connect to this other server, or, you know, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can approach the problem.
Right. And you can go right in and alter the Liquid Soap scripts that Airtime is using to add in that stuff.
Yeah, because one of the things I have to do right now with Live 365 is every time a new track plays, I have to send an HTTP transaction to them to, you know, to send the meta tags to them to let them know what we're playing, you know. And I have there's a little program, it's not made anymore.
You wouldn't have to do that with Airtime. Airtime will send that
perfect.
as part of its stream.
Exactly. So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking for. And so I'm seriously considering this. And
I have a couple of questions. One is confirming that because I think this is the way you run your cloud, is that I can have one machine and have the one machine originate several streams through Airtime, provided that there's sufficient CPU power. And maybe with separate logins or something like that.
Possibly with virtualization. You know, you could set up your own, I don't know, Zen or whatever you're using for virtualization.
I'd have to go that far to do it.
Do you mean
no,
multiple streams with the same content?
You can containerize. You can go into the Liquid Soap scripts for the different instances of Airtime. Tie each instance of Airtime to a specific Liquid Soap script, and then in that one you can tell it which audio cards to use, so that you could run multiple.
Okay.
I haven't done it, but I can see.
Now the other question is I'm assuming the answer is yes, but I want you to confirm, is that it can coexist on the same machine with Rivendell.
Oh, hell no.
I'm kidding. No, because actually if it can coexist on the same machine with Rivendell, then of course I'll install it. And then once it's installed, we can use either.
I don't see why it wouldn't.
It will completely coexist with Rivendell. I've actually been there, done that.
Okay.
Don't expect to get any audio playback out of that machine that's running Rivendell, though.
What? Wait, what? Why not?
Well, from Rivendell you can.
But
because Rivendell takes over the audio card.
Oh, okay. So in other words, the answer is
attempts to take over all the other audio cards that it's not using as well because of bugs that they refuse to fix.
We don't have that problem.
Okay.
But anyway, so I think the answer is that all right, it can coexist, but it would be on a different audio card.
It should be on a different audio card.
Rivendell is just for Microsoft? Or?
No, it's another Linux. It's a very featureful.
What if you use Jack server?
Which leads to another question, and that is that
Rivendell and Jack have issues.
Well, which leads to another question with Airtime and the sound card, is that it can share a sound card with Firefox and Alsa Player and all those goodies.
We, you know, the way that we recommend using it, we recommend that you disable pulse audio, which is usually what comes by default with Ubuntu.
It doesn't with Debian, which I think is an
So I mean, you know, usually then it's a more simplified installation.
Yeah.
So, you don't want to have other applications sort of monopolizing your sound card. But yeah, I mean, this is something that you could set up. But what we're saying, to back up for a lot of the non-technical people, there's a lot of different sort of subsystems inside of Linux and inside of the operating system. And one of those is like the equivalent that handles the communication to your sound card. And this is what we were talking about right now, where there's this program called Rivendell, which actually, if you haven't checked it out, really do check it out, because they do have a lot of really neat features. And it is, it's a very well-developed, well-thought-out piece of software. And, I think it's, yeah. So this is definitely something to be looking at. The point is that there are options, and those options are free and they're open source, so they're legal for your station. You're not going to be using a pirated or cracked version of the playout system. And this is important for Source Fabric, because we're working in places like Belarus, right, or in Russia, right. There was a recent example in Samara, Russia, where there was a media organization, an independent media organization, a newspaper, where the police came in and confiscated all the computers at the organization because they were using pirated software, right? And so piracy was the pretext for shutting down this independent media outlet. And so this is something where we try to tell the people that we're working with, like, hey, whatever you're doing, just get legal. Like, first and foremost, it doesn't have to be with our stuff. It could be with whatever, but or it could even be with with Sam Broadcaster on Windows, but use a legal version of it, right? And that's a really important thing in many places, especially if you've got a media outlet that is not exactly on the greatest terms with the law. You may not be necessarily real friendly with your local law enforcement authorities. Regardless, you don't want to give them any more reasons to come in and give you grief. And so, piracy in many parts of the world is one of the ways that you can actually give a media organization a lot of grief. So this is something that we're doing some work in. Now, what I was going to say is a little bit about how we're headed forward with our development. We do have a really big forum for discussing a lot of these things, and some of it is really geeky, and some of it is like developers talking to developers about, like she was saying, I want to talk to the RESTful API and all this kind of stuff, and that's what you would be doing in the developers forum. We do have a support forum for end users saying, how can I do this? Or I can't get this to install, or whatever. But what my vision and what our goal is as well is to start to use Source Fabric's community as a way of actually exchanging best practices for broadcast in general on the technical side. I mean, what you're doing on content is completely up to you. I can't talk about that. What I can talk about is what you're doing on the technical side, so we can start to share our own know-how and share our experiences, so that we can get to from where you are now to where you want to be faster. And that is a really important part of any open source community. And this is probably the biggest bet that we're making with Source Fabric as a nonprofit foundation, which is we have a relatively, we're relatively well funded. We have a staff of 50 paid worldwide. But our bet right now, and what we need to be able to show our donors especially, is that yes, there is a community which is getting behind what we're doing, and the community is starting to share amongst themselves, and and is starting to take this up as a common central point for sharing their best practices. And so this is what I need to do in order to go back to my donors and say, hey, look, what you gave us to do this kind of work is actually really starting to pay off. And so there is, for us, there is a long bet, and that bet is that if we make software that's good enough that actually fits your guys' needs, then there's going to be a community that will coalesce around it. And so that's what we're hoping for. And I hope that we're doing that right. But I mean, only time will tell.
How do you get the software?
How do you get it? You can go to our website at sourcefabric.org and just download it, or there are directions that'll show you how to download it. One of the key requirements for all of the software that we make is that you have to run Linux. So it won't run on Windows unless you run, like a virtual PC or something like that, or it won't run on Mac, again, unless you run something like Parallels or...
Not to be too confusing, but actually, if you're using their hosting services, or you have just one box running Linux to run your Airtime instance, you can access that from a Mac or a PC.
Yeah, I'm running Windows 7 right now.
Because this interface is entirely browser-based.
Yeah.
You could theoretically, if they ever update the browsers enough, get to this interface and do what you needed to from a smartphone.
And what kind of computer do you need to be able to run this software? Pretty powerful, really powerful computer?
No.
Just the server.
Like a $10.
The server?
Without record, if you don't have to record,
we have our system requirements on our website. I mean,
it's got to be really low though, right?
It's probably like 800 megahertz or more.
Yeah, like a really
relatively,
like $20 computer.
If you're going to be dealing with more than one stream, I highly recommend dual cores, but otherwise it's really...
Try running it on a Raspberry Pi and see what happens.
Just for shits and giggles, right?
Yeah.
Actually,
seriously.
Actually, Liquid Soap as of a week ago is running on a Raspberry Pi.
Yes. I just got a Raspberry Pi and I don't know what to do with it yet. So.
Raspberry Pi is this new little computer. It's a whole computer that's the size of a USB stick. And it sells for what, like $20?
It's like about 50. Yeah.
Okay,
$50.
$50.
The size of just like a little.
It's using an ARM processor, like what's in a smartphone.
Yeah, and basically it doesn't have anything except for like a USB port and a connection to a monitor, but it's like this big, and and it's like $50.
But it could be an HDMI monitor.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, it's a mini HDMI output.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's got an HDMI on it. It's got an audio output. It's got a composite. Got 2 USB ports. And,
in terms of our vision, one of the things that we are doing is there's 2 really big things that we'll be doing in the next probably 6 to 12 months. One is a simplified interface for mobile, so that you could actually run your station from your mobile device.
Mm-hmm.
The other is the ability to actually have a fully RESTful API for use with lots and lots of different things. So if you're running your website on Drupal or whatever else, you would be able to then connect or create a Drupal module that would communicate with our APIs for that.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing that we're working on is an initiative called Superdesk, which is a newsroom, a full-blown newsroom system with basically a lot of different specific modules made for news gathering. So, I mean, there's more on Superdesk up on our site and what we're doing with that. But the idea would be that we're going to be in the next, probably, well, starting on Monday, I'm talking with the Airtime developers to start the transition over to work with Superdesk and to a RESTful API.
I say we lost our mic.
Oh.
Ran out of batteries.
Ran out of batteries.
Ran out of batteries. All right.
All right.
Good
You
enough.
have a computer with Linux that is running the what is it called?
Airtime.
The Airtime.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then you can access Airtime through any web browser.
Right.
Yeah.
That's on the net. That's able to access it through a network connection.
Yeah. Like this is running in Germany, but like if I had one running in my house and I had it set up so I could get to it from here, I could get to it from here.
Yeah, in case like the computer breaks or something, right?
Or well, so the one of the big ideas is that people shouldn't be limited by geography for their radio station. So let's say all of us wanted to get together and make a radio station. I could give everybody slots for a show and you would all have unique logins in Airtime, and then you could program your content. Or if you didn't want to program content, I could set it up so that you can connect to the thing and you can do your show live. So that it doesn't matter where you guys are, I'm in Toronto, you guys are all over the US and wherever, and we can all run a radio station together. So that's one of the big ideas there. So
So does Airtime give you a IPA address, or how does that work? An IP address.
An IP address?
Yes.
So it's running on a server, so you'd have to set up how it connects. But I mean, if you're running Pro, it's running on our servers, so you can get to it from any computer with a web browser.
No
pretty much.
You don't have to. You already set up an installation like for us for the Pro thing. Like
These are all Pro accounts right now. I'm going to give you guys a code for 3 months of Pro if you guys want to try it out. If after you like it, just let me know you were here and we'll
but how does this work with this? Say, our station we're planning to have live most days, like record.
The argument about whether it should be the universal term and whether that's more useful, but really to come back up to sort of
with turntables and everything.
Yeah.
Does that mean make that a input source, or
You can do it multiple ways. The way that we would probably do it at WDRT is to bring that into the studio board on its own channel, so that.
and so
You know, like if you.
It's going to start.
Okay.
So that's another possibility.
Yeah, and I mean, if it's the other way around for some people where, we don't have much time.
Yeah.
So if it's the other way around where you only have a couple hours a day of doing live, just one of the things I wanted to show you. He had on this real quick. Is I've got this mix running up in the background, and I mean, it's pretty full featured for something that's open source. I mean, you can see I got 2 tracks. I got a lot to do with it, but the nice thing is I have it set up right now to kick into my Airtime server. Like if I go to live mode on this. So right here.
What do you want, a phone number?
Yeah.
And so it just connected to Airtime. And now up at the top by master source, you're going to see that the orange light right there. So my show just ended. So now I don't have anything playing, but if I switch this guy over here, I just went from like automation to live DJing. And I mean, you can do that with anything that connects to an IceGas server. There's a lot of different, there's tons of different software that you can use for that.
What was that program you had?
Mix, M-I-X-X-X.
Yeah.
So tomorrow we're gonna have a workshop with this about podcasting and streaming, and I invite Doug, and I also would like to invite you to
Sure.
come to demonstrate how to operate Mix, because Mix is a cross-platform software that you can use with Windows, with Macintosh, and Linux, so that's pretty great.
I can show people how to play music on it. I don't know how much more technical I can get than that.
Should have brought one of our MIDI controllers.
Yeah, that would have been cool to use. I mean,
We
so
actually
Mix
have one
is,
in each
Mix is pretty cool. You can, yeah, sure. You can actually hook up hardware up to this guy.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
really?
have
Yeah.
MIDI controllers in each studio that interface with Mix, so that all those switches and sliders that you see, we actually have physical knobs and pods for, so that we can actually do crossfades without having to take a mouse and drag it. And so, and we've got jog wheels as well, so you could.
But Mix is also free and open source, and it runs on Mac, Windows, and Linux. And so, for a lot of people who, especially doing music DJing, it's really neat. But I mean, it's just one. It's one more option, and whatever you have, you can use, and we're neutral on that kind of stuff. So we're going to be around for the entire weekend, and so I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of questions. And what's really cool as well is that you guys have a lot of experience too, and so I would love to hear more about what you would envision and what we can do to make that happen. So I mean, it's not like I have a totally unlimited budget and stuff like that, but we do have a team, and we do have a process where we're taking feature requests and we're trying to make them happen. Obviously, if you had a rich uncle or aunt, that would like to just deliver a briefcase full of cash so that we can pay our developers, that would be really cool. But if not, that's cool too. So anyway, thanks a lot for coming, and we'll see you around during the rest of the event.
Oh,
and come to Anna's workshop tomorrow. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
So the promo code I was talking about, just use GRC 2012. It's not set up. I'll set it up later today. You're going to get 3 free months of our second tier up. I think it's not a starter.
Code again.
GRC 2012, and then if you go to airtime.pro, you can get there. I haven't set it up yet. I will right after this while we're at dinner.
That's just a promotional code?
Yeah, it's just a promotional code, GRC 2012, all one word. I put my contact info up here, so you got my name, my email address, my Skype, and that's my cell number. It's Canadian if international matters. feel free to get in touch with me. I'd love to hear from you guys. Whatever questions you got, I'd love to help with. Or if you go to our airtime.pro site and you see that live chat thing, and it's after next, I'll be home next Friday. So anytime after that, you click that, you get me.
Hey Josh, how you doing, man?
Yeah, just check in.
You've been watching or listening to a presentation recorded at the Grassroots Radio Conference 2012 at the Indie Media Center in Urbana, Champaign. Thanks.